Hurricane Ian caused havoc and trouble for many here in Southwest Florida. But imagine being flushed from your home and swimming for your life as Ian passed through. Well, we'll hear about that and a whole lot more on today's episode of Here at Home. Welcome to the Here at Home podcast, the podcast about the people here at McGregor, their stories, their ministry, and their love for Jesus. My name is Mark Bricker, your host for the Here at Home podcast, and this is our final episode of Season 3. And joining me on this final episode of Season 3 are Alex and Vicki Swails. So glad to have both of you.
It's good to be here.
Good to be here.
Yeah. And what's really awesome is I had a chance to hear a little bit about your story. Actually, I had heard about your story early on, kind of in a secondhand roundabout way. But because we were recording some other video for another event, I had a chance to actually hear the two of you sharing really just a little snippet, to be honest with you. We didn't give you a long time. It was somewhat of an abbreviated. But in hearing you share your story of what you went through with Hurricane Ian, it made me think, oh, man. In fact, both me and Christian, our producer of this podcast, thought that you guys would be awesome to be on an episode of Here at Home podcast because, you know, you're part of the church family here and your story overlaps with other folks here in our church. And just, it was so encouraging to me in that moment, walking out of the room several weeks ago, hearing that, thought, I can't wait to be able to sit down at the table and really dive in a little bit with them and hear your story. So tell us a little bit about, let's get to know Alex and Vicki a little bit more before we dive into your story. So you guys how long have you been coming to McGregor?
Oh, for some years now. I think I started in the 1980s something.
Was it here at this campus or?
Yes.
Okay, so it was after 83 then, because they moved here in December of 83. And your wife passed away and?
Yes, second wife passed away with colon cancer, and a few years later I married Vicki.
Okay, and so how long have y'all been married now?
29 years.
29 years. Awesome.
Praise the Lord.
Yeah. I know. Where are you from originally, Vicki?
I'm from Ohio.
Ohio. What part of Ohio?
Portsmouth, down on the
yeah.
river on the bottom part of Ohio.
Yeah. What about you, Alex?
I was born and raised in Wauchula, Florida.
Really?
Yes.
Up in the Panhandle?
No. Just north of Arcadia, about 20.
Oh, okay. I'm thinking of another Wauchula. Okay.
Wakulla, you're thinking of the spring.
Yeah, maybe that's it.
This is Wauchula, Wauchula.
Yes. Yeah. Well, neat. Well, how did you end up here in Fort Myers?
FPL, Florida Power Line Company.
All right.
Started out in Arcadia. And after a few years over in Fort Lauderdale, actually 9 years in Fort Lauderdale, had to bid jobs. I bid back to Fort Myers and been here ever since.
All right. Where did y'all meet?
Right here at church.
Right here at church.
Yeah, Alex was teaching a singles class, and I was single at the time, and that's how we met.
Started dating the teacher. I like it. I do love, there's quite a few folks that I know that have met here at McGregor, and can't think of a better place to come together and meet as here at McGregor, or any church really, with that commonality of wanting to grow in your faith and finding someone else that has the same desire. So that's pretty cool. So you were a teacher teaching.
Yes, for a few years under Banks Carl, if you remember him.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, wonderful.
After my wife died, I didn't think I should be there anymore at that time.
Well, I led off the podcast with a little bit of a teaser about something that I don't think anybody would ever want to have to go through. And when you think about Hurricane Ian, how many people it impacted in one way or the other here in our region, I mean, it just was so devastating. And we still have people that are not able to get back into their homes. We're recording this. We're coming up on the 1 year. It's not going to be that just a few months, few months away. And when this comes out, it'll be very close to, that 1 year anniversary of Hurricane Ian and the impact. But your story caught me and my attention because of what you personally went through. Not to mention what you lost, obviously, but we're going to get to that in a minute. But let's kind of set the day up. And it was September 28th that Ian hit. But as it's out there and we're learning that it's coming, toward us, what are your thoughts? Maybe that morning early as you get up, what are Alex and Vicki doing that morning?
Well, I started out continuing to roll up rugs because we have a garage that's ground level. The house is 16 inches higher. Water has gotten over the years with the 5 hurricanes into the garage, but never in the house. So I was still thinking, I'd put things about 18 inches high in the chairs and stuff. And so I had gone to the night before, I'd put up the aluminum panels, across all the windows.
Hurricane shutters.
Hurricane shutters in the back, for river viewing. So I didn't know how high. I went to go in the garage for something and still rolling up another rug. And I looked in and it was almost full of water. So I said to Vicki, we got to go. Let's get out of here.
So that's pretty early in the whole thing. Now, where do y'all live? Are y'all close to the river?
We live on the backside of the river, not the river proper, but we see the dinner train coming by on the railroad track each time they come.
It's like an inlet off of the river.
Okay.
The back of the house was on the river, and the front of the house was on a canal.
Okay. So you got water on
both sides.
Both sides. Okay.
And in prior hurricanes, we'd lived there for 20 years, and they would always say, "Oh, we're getting a surge and blah 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 of 15 feet, 18 feet," and our dimension at that point was only 3 feet off the water.
Yeah.
So we had never had water in the house.
Yeah.
And we were going to go and stay with my stepmother, and but I had been sick since Sunday, so I was in bed. And when he came in and said we have to leave, I got up and it was already over my knees and of water inside the house. Yes.
Wow. So you guys are like a lot of people that had heard, back with Irma, we were going to have this big storm surge, and it did not happen. So you're thinking,
we're fine.
We're fine. Yeah, we're fine. But you saw the water coming in, and by that time you got to the Vicki, it's already coming way in the house.
Yeah.
And this is
what started the influx of so much water so quickly as something hit the panels, because we couldn't see because of the aluminum panels. And it flexed in and hit one of the windows, and as soon as it hit the window, the whole back wall began to fall down.
Oh my goodness.
And it did indeed all fall down, and then furniture moves around like an agitator.
Starts floating and...
Yes, and the refrigerators move around.
It was moving like inside of a washing machine, just around.
Everything in your house is just swirling around.
It tore all of the cabinets off the walls. It went through the walls. So from the front of the house, you can see the river, and from the back of the house, you can see the canal. There's nothing inside the house that stayed. All of the walls came down. And when he came to get me, we actually got to the front door, but because the water was rushing in behind us, we couldn't open the door that opened inside.
Both of us trying to open the door.
Yeah. And so you're thinking everything is sloshing around. The walls are coming down. You're probably thinking the roof's about to come down on top of us if we don't get out. So that's why you're at the front door trying to get out, but you can't open the front door.
That's right. The front door opens in. So we were struggling to get it open, and we couldn't. And now the water's about up to chest.
Oh, my goodness.
And it's coming up quickly. And so all of a sudden, the door didn't open all, but it opened enough that we got through, and it stayed open until both of us got out. Then it slammed shut.
Wow.
We believe that was God getting us out of the house.
Getting you out of that, yes.
Then we were whooshed over to the pepper trees across the road from us.
What do you mean by whished?
The water
just rushed you.
Pushed us over.
Like you had no choice.
Right.
You couldn't swim against it.
So you just went
to the bushes.
Like how far was that? Like 50 feet?
No,
No, about
75.
30 feet from the house.
30 feet, okay.
There's a road in front of our house, to get to our house, and it goes on down to a cul-de-sac. But we went over to the pepper bushes and mangrove trees, along the edge of the canal, and finally found that the only place we could go was across the canal to a 2-story house that we took care of while the owners are up north, and see if we could get up into the second level,
So you're hanging on at the pepper trees,
Yeah.
and you spot the 2-story house, and you think, that's where we need to try to get to.
Right.
Okay.
Exactly. I had picked my slacks up off the back of a door on our way out, and I had my purse in my right arm and my slacks in my left arm. And knowing we had to swim across the canal, and I was worried they had a chain link fence. And my prayer was that I pray that we can get across the canal without getting hurt by the chain
Getting
link.
hung up in that fence.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, are y'all both pretty good swimmers?
She swims much better than I do. She did make it to the front corner of the house across the
The
street.
2-story house you were trying to get
2-story
to?
house.
Okay.
But I slid to the left and wound up in more pepper bushes and mangroves.
So you missed the house.
Right. But she was holding on to the front corner of the house. And I handed over hand in the bushes until I got to an oak tree, because oak tree's a lot stronger than the pepper bush. And it was only about 30 feet angled over to where she was at. And she was waiting on me, but I knew if I let go, I'd go with the water, because it was just pushing through there about, I don't know how fast it was
Yeah.
Yeah, we
Wow.
had the current. We had 3
So you can
footways.
see her.
going. But I can't
You can
get
see each other, but you just can't get to her. And so you're just hanging on to that tree.
Right, they limb. And finally, I turned one way to look and see what else was coming. There's just furniture of every kind coming down. And believe it or not, here come our front door.
Oh, my goodness. The one you couldn't open a while ago. Now it's...
Well, it actually pulled it out of the concrete, where the hinge side is. And there it was, just going like a canoe right by.
Oh, my goodness.
And I turned back to look. Vicky's, still waiting, and she was gone.
Oh,
And
no.
now for the next 18, 19 hours, we didn't know where each other was at.
Okay, so pause there. You see him in the oak tree, and then all of a sudden, obviously something happens to you. What, could you not hold on any longer?
Well, what happened, a life preserver, one of those white round ones,
Uh-huh.
like on a boat,
Yeah.
came and it was going past me. But at the last second, it turned and came right to me.
Oh, wow.
So I was able to get the life preserver with my purse arm. And at this point, I had lost my pants. I don't know where they went.
But she never lost her purse.
Yeah.
And then I knew he couldn't swim to me, so I let go of the corner of the house and floated to the front of the house. And when you got in the leeward side of the house, there was no more waves, there was no more current.
Much calmer.
Exactly, because the wind was coming from our back. And I got to the front steps of that house, and I'm sitting on the steps, and I hear a voice that says, "I'm coming to get you." And I looked left and right, and then I looked up and I said, "Okay, I'm ready to go." And it was a man from the house next door. He says, "I'm a Marine, and I'm coming to get you." And he swam. In between the houses was the waves and the current and the wind. He swam through that and got a hold of me and took me back to his attic,
Oh, wow.
where he had 4 dogs and girlfriend was there, but I was safe.
Right. So this all happened pretty quickly. So you're like within just a minute or two had found your way around to the other side of that house where it was calmer. That's when this gentleman sees you, and he obviously comes pretty quickly and is able to rescue you, get you back to his house and into his attic.
Exactly.
Which was obviously the only place above, I guess, the water level.
Yeah, the water was up to the bottom of his, where you go into the attic.
Yeah. Wow.
So we sat up there until the water started to go down.
Okay. And so you're just praying that Alex is going to be...
We know, because of events that have happened prior to the storm, that God is always in control.
Amen.
And we knew, both of us knew, that nothing bad had happened to us. And when I got into the house, they took care of me, or into the attic. They put a shower curtain around me. And then when the water started going down, he got us all down, put the dogs in a little wooden boat, and he had to carry me because I couldn't walk. I could barely talk at that time. And
had you ever met this person before? Because
No.
they weren't too far from where you live, obviously.
no, he was right across the canal.
But never, okay.
Never met him.
Yeah.
But then a couple in a big pickup truck, one of those tall pickup trucks, came and picked me up and took us to the girlfriend's house where the water had already gotten out of her house. And I stayed there overnight till the next morning.
Right. Okay, so Alex, you're still in the tree, and all
hanging on the branch of the tree.
hanging on the branch, and all of a sudden your wife is gone.
Yes.
So what's going through your mind at that point?
Well, I said, I'm not going to think of anything but that she went around the corner.
Yeah, and which is what had happened.
Right, but I didn't know that.
And you couldn't get there.
Before we get away from the man who came and saved her, how did he even see her head above the water?
Yeah.
How did he even know somebody was coming around the house?
Yeah.
That was another God thing in my mind.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm hanging there for several hours because I still want to get around and see what happened.
So for several hours,
Yes, I stayed
you're
there.
hanging on to that tree.
But I began to get cold and chill and started shaking. And I knew I couldn't hold on much longer. And stuff was still a canoe, a kayak, the door, everything just flew by, with that water and wind. You got and that wind blowing, it'd pick up the particles of water and just blow them in your face.
I don't think we kind of can get that full picture of what that was like, because we had over 100-mile-an-hour winds along with that storm surge, that rushing water and all the debris and all the stuff. So, yeah, it was
amazing.
Yeah.
But
for several hours to be hanging on, that's pretty good.
Well, I knew I had to do something, but see, I was still trying to get to my wife.
Yeah.
And then, a canoe come by, kayak come by, door come by, pieces of furniture, but they were just flying. I said, Lord, if you'll bring me something big enough for me to grab a hold of and close enough to me, I said, wherever it goes, I'll go with it. And about that time, I looked, he coming across the canal with something big wobbling in the water and just moving slowly. It was the side of a wooden shed. And so not only did it get close, it come under me, and I had to get away from the nails, but I did grab onto it. And as soon as I let go of the branch, a piece come over me and said, now you're going the way I want you to go. And so I don't know how many canals I went over. The water was still rushing pretty good, but I felt grass under my feet, and I was in some guy's pool cage, and I had to go through the dirty water in the pool because I couldn't stand up, and just crawl.
So you ended up on that. How long was this raft ride?
I have no idea about
A couple of canals from where he started.
Okay.
I'm not sure.
And all of a sudden now you're inside somebody else's pool.
Right.
Their cage, lanai.
What's left of their
What
cage.
left? Yeah, I'm sure.
And just as I get to the glass door to see if anybody's home, the door opened, and it was an elderly gentleman saying, it looks like you need some help. I sure do.
That's an understatement, sir.
So he helped me up. I stayed with him that night, and his son and brother, I think. And I'd like to know, but I can't remember his name or the street. But so stayed there that night, and let me just say, 911 will not come out for any reason until the governor says they can do something.
Yeah, in the middle of a storm like that. They
I
will
had
not.
lost my phone. He had a phone, but it wasn't a smartphone. And in this world today, if you don't have a phone, you can't do anything.
Yeah.
So
Now, did he have much damage? Was he flooded
he
in his
was
house?
maybe 8 to 10 inches.
Okay.
But it had already started to go down even though it was a slow moving storm, it did eventually go down. So early that morning, I got up and said, thank you, and the Lord will bless you for what you done for me. And I had to go around the house because the front was blocked. And all that black silt mud from the river was everywhere. And here come another pickup truck for me, which I didn't realize he had to turn around, and it was close to a cul-de-sac. And he come back by, and I had on my dirty T-shirt, my Wrangler jeans, shorts, and socks. I had lost my shoe. And he stopped and says, "Where are you going?" I said, "I've got to go try and find my wife over here on Alameda Street. I'll drive." And he said, "Hop in. I'll take you anywhere you want to go."
Oh, wow.
Another little thing from God.
Yeah.
So we rode around and asked people, and did run into the firemen. We run into a couple of deputies and gave them her description and what have you. And tried to go down back to the house to Riverside, but it was so muddy and so many trees in the way we couldn't make it. So they took me over to the shelter on Ty Street, Oak Tree Middle School, or something like that. They should have been busy, but they had lost power and water, so everybody had left except the workers that were there. So the nurses descended on me, and they wanted to. I was all cut up with my arms hanging out on them branches, and all that stuff getting there.
Mm-hmm.
So they fixed me up. They didn't have any hot food because they didn't have any electricity. So they gave me a banana and stuff for breakfast, Crunch bars and stuff. And they said, "Do you have any idea?" I said, "No, I lost my wallet, lost my phone. I have no way to tell you anything except my name is Alex Swails." And so I asked him, I said, "You could probably call, out of 28 phone calls, my son, my daughter, her sister, everybody." I said, "But ask for Vicki Riley Swails." I said, "That'll give both last names and maybe somebody will recognize her." So it didn't turn out that way. They made 28 phone calls. And no one responded until about 4 hours later. I heard one of the nurses say, "Oh, yeah, tell him. And they said, "Do you know a Patrick Riley?" "No, I don't know a Patrick Riley, no." So they said, "Well, here," he said he knows you, and it was Pat Riley. I always call him Pat, so it didn't. I wasn't thinking too straight anyway.
You had a good excuse.
And he said, "No," he said, "I don't know where she's at, but she's okay, and now, and she'll know that you're okay." But that was about 18 hours before we knew that he was okay. And she can tell you about who called. Pat Riley was her ex-husband, and he never answers a call that he doesn't have.
An unknown call, he never answers those.
If he doesn't have the number, he doesn't. And not only did he call back, but he picked it up. It was hours later that he picked it up, and his wife said that you had a phone call, and he started to delete it, and he said, "Maybe I should call that number," and he did. And
so you went, really both of you are going, like you said, 18 hours from the time that you guys last saw each other hanging on a tree and hanging on a house till knowing that at least that the other person had gotten information that the other person was alive and was okay. What are some of the things that are going through your mind during that time? Because, I can't imagine. I think it's hard for a person that's been married or is married to think about what that would be like to be not just separated, but thinking the other person, we have no idea. I mean, this was a very, very serious situation you were both in.
Well, she was pretty ill, but I can say for me, I said, "God, I refuse to think anything that you have saved her also." And it turned out that was the way it was.
That's what his plan was. Yeah. Well, now, when you say she was very ill, what?
I had been sick since Sunday.
So to go through something like this was just even more stress on you.
Trauma. Yeah. We got out of the man's attic, and he had to carry me because I couldn't walk, could barely talk. And he put it on Facebook the next morning. "Does anybody know Vicki Riley?" And a friend of ours had done this guy's yard work a year ago, and they were still in contact on Facebook. So Steve came over and picked me up, and he says, "Where do you want to go?" And so I said, "I want to go to my sister's house in North Fort Myers," that's where he took me. And her house had 2 feet inside.
Oh, goodness.
Never had water before.
So she had no beds, no couches, and he says, "You can't stay here." So he took me with him to his house. And so then my sister knew I was okay. And because of Pat, my ex-husband knew that Alex was okay. They got their stories together, and all of our kids knew we were both
okay,
alive.
yeah.
Both alive, praise God.
Yeah.
When you say what goes through your mind, I think we were just both grateful to be rescued, number one, by different people. And we were, when you start watching the news and you see all the people that died in this and lost, of course we lost everything, but we were just grateful because we still know God is in control. So my sister and her husband, they came over and picked him up at the shelter and brought him to where I was. And
But that was a sweet reunion.
Well, we wound up taking her Friday. That was Thursday. We got back together, and Friday we took her to the hospital. And that was another thing there, because there's a line of cars in the emergency lane there.
Oh, I'm sure.
And here was a guy in a uniform, and some cars would leave, and this car would get to stay. Well, he came to our car, and he looked at Vicki, and he says, "I'll be right back with a wheelchair."
They knew.
Yeah.
They knew. That was Friday morning, and I was in the hospital till Saturday afternoon.
And
I was dehydrated. You don't have food. What is that?
Yeah,
Malnutrition.
malnourished, dehydrated, and sugar was going crazy.
Yeah, my blood sugar was crazy. So they put me in all kinds of IVs in the hospital.
Okay, so you've lost everything, but you're together, and so now it's kind of the post Ian rebuild. What's next? How did the church, how did your life group people here begin to minister to you guys in the aftermath?
The first thing that they did was clothing, shoes, underwear. It was amazing when everything...
Because you'd lost everything.
Absolutely
everything.
Yeah.
And then in our class, when they found out what happened, a couple that had a house full of furniture and storage for several years said that we could have everything that they had in storage. And I just said, thank you, but we have no place.
No place to put it.
But the man that came and picked us up, our friend, gave us his bedroom, walk-in closet, and a bathroom. That was our little place for 2.5 months. So we had a safe place, and he didn't get any water inside his house.
Wow.
He lived in Buckingham. We were happy about that. Oh, but the kids came and found my phone under a pile of mud in the house, and it was still working. So my daughter took it, put it in rice, and charged it with one of those flat charger things. And so at least I had my information from the phone. She had also found my computer and sent the hard drive to my son, who is a computer person, and he recovered everything that was on my...
Oh, wow.
Well, I do financial counseling, I do income taxes, and all that record was in that hard drive. So he recovered everything that was there.
Wow.
And since the church didn't know about us for a couple of days, so some of our friends from another church brought us some clothes and stuff right away.
They fed us for several days.
And for 3 or 4 days they fed us, so it was just godly people doing things God wants them to do.
Yeah.
And so staying with the guy, we had everything you need to survive, if you want to call it. And we did eventually in December purchase a new home, or new to us. And that's when the people who had held the furniture for us. Our Sunday school director gave us a whole bedroom of furniture. It was amazing that
the outpouring
of God's love. Like one person said, that your house is filled with love.
Yeah.
It is. Just everything on the walls came from friends and family, and you couldn't even ask for how well everything went together. But the Lord knows how that works.
McGregor not only gave us the clothing and support, we had, you don't even want to go back to the house and see it. You don't want to look at it, And through a couple of people in our Sunday school class, they got the church to say they'd send somebody over to help clean out the house, with all the. It was just amazing the power that water has, being pushed by high-powered wind. And so we, I forgot where I was going.
These had people that came.
Yeah, but notwithstanding, the church, McGregor gave us monies to help right off the bat. And then we got the clothes, and then we got some gift cards from the church, and then we got some more monies from the church. So big help in a time of need, let me tell you that.
Well, the church sent, they were able to send the Word of Life kids, and they came over and actually cleaned out the inside of the house. They were carrying concrete blocks, plasterboard.
Getting all that stuff out of there.
Yeah, and at the end, when they just got it out, the big truck came by with the claw to pick it all up.
Perfect timing.
That was amazing. That was God again. It was the Lord that just really took care of us.
I truly believe that God uses people whether they know it or not.
That's right. That's right. Share with our listeners, just each of you, what was one major takeaway for you as it relates to what God was teaching you through this entire process?
I know one thing that we didn't realize till later. God's compassion, the fear, there was no fear, there's no being afraid, the peace of God that passes all understanding. And we didn't realize that till all said and done. But,
so many people have mentioned, weren't you afraid? And there was no fear. From the start to the end of it. And I was sick. I didn't know what was going on. But there was never fear. You know how when you get separated from your spouse and you think you're so afraid, but we weren't.
Yeah, the Lord gave you what you needed.
He absolutely did.
And I just can't overstate how potentially traumatic what you went through should have been, because to be essentially flushed out of your house, trying to make it to another house that's up higher, getting separated, hanging on for hours, not knowing where your spouse is for 18 hours, being sick on top of all that, and just,
And the hospital taking me in.
And they
were
place.
Getting rid of people like crazy.
All that happened, and you see God's hand of protection through all of that, and His hand of guidance through the whole thing. And what's neat is the trust that you both had, because while you would have thought and hoped and prayed that things would have worked out, that you would have been back together, even if it hadn't, you still were trusting in the Lord.
Amen.
That He was in control, and you could still praise Him. And so thank you so much for taking time to share your story. And I know, as much as it's encouraged me today, it will encourage our listeners as well, just to hear your faith. Not so much your story. Your story is amazing, but it's the faith and trusting in the Lord and seeing His hand through all of it that really makes the story amazing. So,
but for the grace of God, we would have died in the house.
Yeah, that's right. Well, that wraps up what will be our final episode of Season 3 of Here at Home. And thank you for being our guest on our very final episode of Season 3. And so thank you, Alex and Vicki. And thank you to our listeners for your faithful listening. And we'll continue to, make more podcasts in the future, but for this year, we're going to wrap up this round of Here at Home, this season of Here at Home. And thanks again for listening, and we'll see you back next year on Here at Home.